they could be of any nation. Headquartered atop Mount Everest, the Global Peace Agency is outside the government, beyond the police. The GPA functions as a replacement for both Interpol and the International Criminal Court. The agency conducts both arrests and trials of apocalyptian collaborators and international human rights abusers. At stake is no less than the survival of Earth itself. For you see, the GPA is secretly a faction of scions known as the Visionaries. Utilizing Eternium, the Visionaries mentally navigate hypertime. This navigation is known as psychohistory. Either the Earth evolves into a society of human rights, peace, and justice, or else a great disaster will devolve it into an age of the animal. Halloween, 1938. Newspaper publisher Lee Travis was en route to a costume party when anonymous followers forced him off the road and buried him alive in a nearby cemetery. Fortunately, grave robbers noticed the freshly covered grave and unearthed Travis. Sympathetic, the grave robbers gifted Travis 2 loaded revolvers they unearthed from an unmarked grave. With his car inoperable, Travis hiked it to the home of a local inventor named Albert Elwood and his lab assistant, Wing. Elwood called the police. When the police appeared, Travis recognized them as his would-be assailants. Quickly, Travis, Elwood, and Wing barricaded the house, and a shootout ensued. Elwood and Wing tested their non-lethal multi-guns, while Travis discovered bullets fired from the revolvers curved in mid-air and never depleted ammo. Using his newspaper's resources, Travis figured the Octopus Gang had targeted him. Inspired by his symbolic resurrection, Lee Travis embarked on a crusade as the Crimson Avenger. When last we left Jimmy Woo, a talking gorilla was fighting a Chinese monkey prince in the Atlas Mountains. Still with me? Noticing Woo's team, the monkey prince bounded away. The talking gorilla introduced himself as Kenneth Hale. According to him, the Central Inquiries Agency recently recommissioned the mountain lair. Finding cover, the heroes spied on a mining operation. A newly discovered vein of nth metal was being mined. According to Grayson, M11 was comprised of nth metal. The team finally had all the puzzle pieces assembled. An extra-national party was conspiring with America to abduct roboticists to design and program robots for deployment from Oolong Island. M11 beckoned the team, now cloaked by Grayson, to infiltrate the mountain lair. There, they beheld the horror of 500,000 M models built for land, sea, air, and urban warfare. And more were rolling off the assembly line every minute. Suddenly, the M models activated and corralled the intruders. Their puppeteer then presented himself. His name was Sin Tzu, a master of Meta Sua, a discipline that channeled the Sage Force. Wu thought he was an urban legend. Expelled from the cult of Kali, Sin Tzu was the scourge of the petty states of Unglong, Vetnak, and Sinna. Supposedly, he unearthed ancient scrolls in the Chulan cave. Locals believed the scrolls were written in the 7 capital cities of heaven. Grayson then noticed his headband was on the fritz and that his saucer was being hauled onto the factory floor for reverse engineering. Although admitting it would be wise to kill the intruders, Sin Tzu was instructed to take them to his leader. In a lavish throne room, the villain was at last revealed. Golden Claw. Of course, he delivered a monologue and a plot twist. Decades ago, he was an insignificant Mandarin loyal to the emperor during the revolution. He fled when the revolutionaries came for his research into the pool of blood. During the Mongolian Empire, Genghis Khan consumed an extract from the pool. His youth returned, however briefly. He sought its location beyond the borders of his empire. Alas, Genghis Khan perished before learning of the pool's location. The pool of blood was a vein of Eternium, and the Golden Claw mined all of it. Enough for 10 lifetimes. Enough for Jimmy Woo. Turns out, Wu was a descendant of Genghis Khan, and not just any descendant. Few could consume Eternium without fatal mineral poisoning. Those who survived merely fell asleep. Wu then remembered his spiked drink. Nightshade deduced the Golden Claw was also a descendant of Genghis Khan. Morella stated his goal was an immortal dynasty, and Wu realized minority agents were being framed as spies for Red China. Golden Claw applauded. Financed by America, the M models would invade Beijing and install him as the new emperor. He would then punish Taiwan and reconquer Mongolia. Afterward, he would subdue the world using the one thing China held in abundance: labor. Capitalists the world over would leap at the chance for cheap labor, 1 billion cheap laborers. And while America's military presence would anger nations, China would offer only square deals to the third world. The 20th century wounded a dragon. The 21st century would revive it. Good thing M11 and the Saucer were recording and broadcasting the entire scene. FBI agents arrested J. Edgar Hoover. The president resigned. Equal rights movements were galvanized. And M11 revealed his brain was comprised of both Sentio Metallico and Mysterium. He severed Sun Tzu's link with the M models and ordered them to raise the factory. While the team was fending off Chang Tzu, Lady Lotus, Sun Tzu, and the Monkey Prince, Wu pursued Golden Claw. The enemies were locked in mortal combat aboard an escape copter when Wu sabotaged the rotors. Plummeting, Wu was rescued by Grayson aboard the Saucer. Golden Claw's body was never recovered. Dr. Arthur Nagin was a black market surgeon whose organ trafficking was exposed by the Crimson Avenger. Fleeing to the Belgian Congo, Nagin became employed in harvesting and trafficking animal organs. One day, local poachers arrived at his front clinic with the body of an ape man. Harvesting its organs, Nagin was confused as to the mixing and matching of human and gorilla organs without rejection. It was then the mythical golden gorilla attacked and cursed Nagin with having a human head and a gorilla body. Rather than lose his mind, Nagin regarded his deformity as an invaluable scientific project. Raiding insurgent camps for blood diamonds, Nagin began stockpiling the necessary finances. Employing an aspiring sorcerer and a soldier of fortune, Nagin sought to reverse engineer singular magic into a reproducible product. Although capturing the golden gorilla, the soldier of fortune, Kenneth Hale, was cursed. The sorcerer, Chondu, deduced the golden gorilla was once William Glenmorgan, the legendary Congo Bill. He was cursed by the red gorilla, servant of the divine Bawana beast. Furthermore, the curse bestowed functional immortality. Abandoning Hale, Nagin and Chondu snuck back to America, where they recruited fringe scientists Xavier Simon, Franz Radznik, and Gerard Schugel. Despite their joint efforts, all abducted subjects perished, save one. An anonymous subject whose identity remains unknown. This subject's brain was successfully transplanted into various apes and humans. Upon transplantation into a mutated albino gorilla, the subject murdered Simon, Schugel, and Radznik. Nagin barely escaped. Chondu's fate remained a mystery for decades. Reappearing 70 years later, Nagin sought collaboration with Niles Calder. As flawed as Calder was, he drew the line at creating abominations. However, Noggin manipulated several Calder House residents into cooperating. These residents were the psychotic Thursday Rubenstein, the desperate Gerald Morgan, and a now chimera Chondu. Together, the headmen seek eugenic perfection through infinite variety in infinite combinations. After all, what does everybody want? I could go for some myself. Let me just text Infinity and see if she's up. York Hills was once a thriving coal town. That was until the coal companies decided to play the victim by shuttering the mines. In the end, coal prices soared. York Hills' fortunes crashed. The wealthier families relocated while keeping their lands for tax purposes. The local schools lacked funding to modernize. And local enterprise was reduced to so-called yard sales. Local miner Darren Chamberlain believed the company narrative and succumbed to alcoholism and conspiracy theories. His wife perished from lung cancer caused by polluted air, and his children, Joe and Annie, were reduced to scavenging and gig work. One day, while driving his father to dialysis, Joe noticed a stranded motorist. The man was well-dressed, likely from Pittsburgh, and spoke in an upper-crust accent. Grateful, the man offered Joe gas money or any assistance. Joe, always a good Samaritan, declined the offer. Still thankful, the stranger asked him about York Hills. Joe regaled him with tales of fun and woe. Afterward, Joe dropped the man off at a bus station. Before they parted, the stranger shook his hand and introduced himself as Basil Black, a simple traveling salesman. Joe said he would be grateful if the salesman could bring some business to York Hills. Afterward, York Hills experienced a dramatic turnaround. Land was sold to the remaining citizens. Nth metal was discovered below the coal deposits. The Chamberlains felt like the Beverly Hillbillies. However, one night, Darren attacked newcomers to York Hills. Joe attempted to find his father before the police could. He drove his restored Charger around the county for half the night. Eventually, he found his father among a gang of extremists. Darren told his son he was determined to protect York Hills from being exploited ever again. York Hills was for Yorkers. The police descended on the scene, and a shootout occurred. During the hail of bullets, Joe began burning from the inside out, transforming into the demonic Brimstone. Darren fled the scene in his pickup, prompting Brimstone to warp Joe's car into a hell charger. Run off the road, Darren was caught and then incinerated by Brimstone. The Hell Lord Mephisto then appeared and cackled a tinging cold exclamation. He had made a deal with Joe Chamberlain, and it was time for Joe to hold up his end of the bargain. Mephisto tasked Joe with hunting and punishing the names in a fireproof ledger, or else York Hills would plummet into burning coal mines. Following their father's funeral, Annie and Joe departed York Hills, seeking both Welshers and allies. In Hollywood, they met Rebecca Carstairs, whose stage name was Witchfire. She was the daughter of Hecate and Mephisto. Abandoned by her parents, she became a fast friend of the Chamberlains. In New Orleans, they met Damon Hellstrom, a supernatural detective and abandoned son of Mephisto. He was also all too happy to help the Chamberlains. And on down the road ventures the Hellions, driving like the demon that drives their dreams. No, don't click away. You'll like this, I swear. Following the Amazons' relocation to Gateway City, Queen Hippolyta opened a school on the grounds of her embassy. Hippolyta Academy serves to educate and heal stateless women. The Bureau of Normalcy often propagandizes the academy as a terrorist indoctrination camp. However, I feel a great swell of pity for the poor soul who comes to that academy looking for trouble. Recently, the faculty has welcomed a visiting professor, Kahori, wielder of a cosmic cube. She teaches how to remain unwavering in the face of devastation and miracles alike. Or you can listen to Brunhilde's lecture on how all men are disappointments, especially in the bedroom. However, keep a side eye on Aresia. She's always looking over her shoulder, and it's not for an attacker. Following the decimation of Bialia, Hive reorganized as contractors for various Black Ops endeavors. Are you in need of capturing, exploiting, building, or dismantling robots? Or are you in need of extracting, salvaging, and refining Eternium or Nth metal? Or perhaps you require PIM particles for God knows what. Currently, the beekeepers comprise a hive without a queen. 1940. In the fifth dimension, that is the God Sphere, Bolo, chief technologist of Darkseid, crafted the perfect alternative to parademons. This alternative was an automaton comprised of Sentio Metallico and housing Quintessence, the soul of a god. The idea was to make soldiers inexhaustible. Once presented to his ruler, Darkseid took unforgivable offense. Sentio Metallico was a sensing, sapient creation metal. Its will could neither bend nor break, and should not all wills bend and break for Darkseid? Bolo's quintessence was extracted from his body, rendering him an amnesiac soul. The automaton would have been smelted. However, Darkseid noticed the robot's likeness to Uxus, his earlier self. Instead, the automaton was disposed of via boom tube to the trash bin that was the mortal sphere. And Bolo. His quintessence was transferred into a body comprised of X-element, molded by Darkseid. His mind was broken, and he was renamed Dr. Bedlam. Meanwhile, the automaton landed in the Earth 2 universe. Junk dealer Clara Crandall salvaged the robot. The automaton learned to speak, developed emotional intelligence, and modeled social skills. Named Marvex, the robot became public knowledge upon capturing Von Crab, a Nazi spy who coveted the Argo harness invented by Sarah Starr. Marvex was then apprehended by the government and rendered to the inhumane Dr. Nar. Marvex was vivisected, dismembered, and reassembled. NAR assembled a cadre of scientists with questionable ethics. These include the likes of Philo Zog, Dr. Legrand, Joel and Joshua Williams, Franz Schneider, Matthew Tyler, Professor Zurin, and many more. Each was granted a piece of Sentio Metallico extracted from Marvex. Despite its top-secret nature, Project Marvex leaked data to the private sector and enemy nations. Upon discovery, those responsible disappeared and their names were redacted. Project Marvex was shuttered until the Apocalypse War, when it was reactivated as Project M. Following World War II, the public believed nuclear weapons to be the only arms race. National secret and corporate societies were competing in artificial intelligence, robotics, and cybernetics. Occasionally, even individuals would get in on the act. The factions included ICON, Tyler Chemo Robotics, Advanced Science Institute, the Enclave, and countless others. Some were academic experiments, others were corporate endeavors, many were top-secret projects, and a few were private think tanks. But perhaps the most frightening was the phone company. Recently, due to their sacrifices during the Apocalypse War, artificial beings who passed the Turing test were granted human rights and personhood. You should see their pride flag. Thank you for being a fiend. They are the hidden figures of fringe science. They are the horde culture. On the eve of her retirement age, Augusta Bromes was on the verge of a breakthrough. Following the Apocalypse War, Augusta was tasked by Terrafitech to restore global agriculture. However, her IntelliCrops would have been invasive species, crippling the global ecosystem. Augusta accused Terrafitech of the Matilda effect and resigned. Lily Lamus was a geneticist on the board of Tyler Chemo Robotics. On the verge of a luxurious retirement, Lily lobbied to license her GMO seeds to farmers and gardeners. This would have disabled millions of individual farmers from competing with GMO crops at market. The entire global food supply was to be her intellectual property. Her stock options would have yielded a fortune for 10 lifetimes. When Steppenwolf invaded, the global food supply was saved by traditional crops. Afterward, Lily was only left with a fortune for a single lifetime. My heart bleeds. Post-apocalypse, the surviving powers banned all seeds from being intellectual property. Her life's work in ruins, Lily grieved she was too old to start over. So, what did she do? She started over. She reinvented herself as a geriatric eco-terrorist. After infecting crops with a designer virus, Lily was recruited by Augusta. Picture it, Florida. Edith Scutch was a blue blood heiress whose family founded the earliest slave plantations in the state. Due to emancipation, food safety regulations, and labor protection law, her family evolved into anti-government fanatics. During the Apocalypse War, Scutch enslaved refugees for her farms. Afterward, she was apprehended by the GPA. She blamed non-existent payroll managers and played the victim. While en route to the Electric City penal colony, Edith was freed by Augusta. Opal Ventiver was a geneticist specializing in transgenics. Her goal was to create photosynthetic humans. Recruited by Project Helix, Opal trafficked unwilling and expendable test subjects from among the stateless. However, when Robert Todd was appointed DEO director, Helix was shuttered. During her trial for crimes against humanity, Opal was freed by Augusta. Due to their victims seeking treatment at Doom Manor, the Horde culture often clashes with the Doom Patrol, with each side declaring, "People are not expendable." Guess who is and isn't expendable is a matter of perspective.